A client sent me a screenshot last week. It was from a popular foreign exchange app. Super clean interface, one button execution. And he said, this just seems easier. Why don't I just use this? He was about to move 850,000 sterling for a real estate transaction. Property was in Spain and he was converting to euros. And his completion date was in 2 weeks' time. So I asked him one question. What happens if the transaction gets flagged for compliance or frozen for review? And he went quiet. I'm Dave Huggett, and today I want to explain when convenience works and when it can potentially become the most expensive decision you make. Let me be clear first of all, I'm definitely not against apps. For the right use case, they're brilliant. I use them. They're fast, transparent pricing, low friction, but that's if you're moving 3 or 4 figures occasionally. And in that instance, there's no need for strategy or loads of human intervention. It's the same if you're a frequent traveler, you're buying meals out abroad or you're on holiday. Apps are brilliant for that kind of transaction. And for those kind of transactions, an app is exactly what you want. But the problem is when the transaction size increases, the app model doesn't scale with it. And most people don't realize this until after the event. So here's what happens. Apps are automated. Their entire business model relies on processing high volume with as little human intervention as possible. Under a certain threshold, let's say 50,000, compliance is pretty light and everything moves through pretty easily. There really isn't that much friction. But once you cross into 6 or 7 figures, especially for real estate or large one-off transactions, the app's automated systems start flagging things. Source of funds, beneficial ownership, AML checks. And when that happens, transactions don't just get delayed, they get frozen. And then you're stuck. You've got completion in 2 weeks' time, funds are locked, and there's nowhere to communicate. You can't call them. There might be a generic email or a chatbot on the platform, but essentially you're in a queue and at the mercy of an automated system that doesn't care about your situation. I've seen this happen loads and loads of times. And every time the client comes to me and asks if I can fix it, sometimes I can, sometimes I can definitely help and advise, but sometimes I can't. Either way, they've learned the true cost of convenience. Let me break down the cost of using apps for a large cross-currency transfer. First, there's the spread. Apps often advertise low fees, which often they are. The spread is where they make money. And for large amounts, even small spreads compound. On 850,000 sterling to euros, a 0.3% spread is around £2,500. Not huge, but not nothing, which compared to banks is very attractive. But there's a massive lack of flexibility. If the market moves and you want to understand how to adjust your strategy properly, an app doesn't offer that. It basically offers one-click execution or nothing. Lastly, and most importantly, there's no relationship. No one knows your situation, and no one's thinking about your timeline or your backup plan. If something goes wrong, you're on your own. So compare that with someone that knows your situation, that you're buying a property, for example, or investing in something overseas. They understand your timeline, they understand your situation. They've helped you through all the compliance procedure, all the paperwork required, answered any questions that you have around the transaction, and they'll pick up the phone at 10 o'clock at night if you need them to. When you're moving a significant amount of money internationally, that bit becomes invaluable. You may pay a bit more spread for all that, but you're getting absolute certainty in return. So when should you choose strategy over convenience? And that's simple. It's when the transaction matters. If you're moving 6 figures or more and there's a deadline, for example, if it's tied to a property purchase, a business deal, or a relocation, and a big compliance delay could really cause you problems, this is where convenience and tight spreads become a risk. Because then you don't need an app, you need a person that's going to own the situation and someone that understands the stakes. I worked with a client last year who was relocated to Portugal and needed to move 600,000 euros across multiple stages: property deposit, final payment, and living costs. And he asked, can I not just use an app? And I said, yeah, you can. But here's what happens if the transaction gets delayed or you have questions along the way. We now see everything that can potentially go wrong and the damage and frustration that it can cause. He decided to go with a structured approach. So we mapped his timeline, prepared all his compliance requirements, and executed in stages. No stress, no delays, slightly higher spread, but the value was certainty. So here's the framework to follow. If the amount is under 50,000 and it's not time sensitive, then an app's probably fine. But if you're looking at 6 figures or more and there's a critical deadline, then you need a human involved. And you can ask yourself this: if the transaction gets delayed, what's the cost going to be to you? And if the answer is significant, then convenience just isn't worth the risk. So if your provider's an app or a bank that can't offer you a named contact that you can call anytime you want to, then you're basically gambling with your timeline. In the next video, I'm going to talk about what banks don't tell you about international payments, the hidden costs, the delay tactics, and the bits they bury in terms and conditions. If you're facing a large international transaction from one currency to another, and you want to talk through and sense check what you're doing, then just hit the link below. You can book a call with us and have a no obligation, pressure-free conversation about the best thing to do. And if this video was useful, please hit like, please subscribe, and thanks for watching.